Good morning. It is Friday, February the 8th, 2019, and I am Professor Richard Wright, and welcome to Business Law and B234 Business Law. And I will be your professor for the next, 5.5 weeks, 6 weeks, and I am going to be able to guide you and direct you and help you to understand business law. So I will set out today my expectations and things that you should pay particular attention to throughout the whole quarter about assignments and things of that nature. Remind you of how you can determine due dates, remind you of the course content, and then at the end, I will let you know a little bit about myself that you don't already know. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. There we are. Let's move that over a little bit. Okay, here we go. Okay, as you can see from looking at this, you see your course home page. That's the page that you should see whenever you go to your class. The very first thing you should see, and on that course home page, you will see instructor information, my name, the phone number 630-660-8480. Get accustomed to knowing that number if you need me. That is my cell, and I tell you that you can use it. Next I have is students, and this is what I want to read to you so you'll know that it means what it says. It's not just something that's on here. By the way, everything that's on here is not just written here, but it's for your own information and very important to follow and use for your benefit. Starting with students can feel free to call me, text me, or email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. And it means what it says. I have been known as a hands-on professor when it comes to students, to make sure that students' success is what I point out as something that is my goal, and I continue to operate in that vein. And you guys are new to me, so you will learn my techniques if you have me in other classes as well. I am teaching this business law class. I have, as you discovered, already been a lawyer. Graduated now 41 years ago from Northwestern Law School. I did primarily criminal law, but I did entertainment, sports, radio, TV, family law. I did a lot of contracts. I did organizational setups for corporations. I did commercial real estate, residential real estate. I did all that kind of stuff. So I'm well versed in the area. In fact, my career started at a big law firm that was a corporate law firm. And so I'm well versed in this area. And I have some things that are going to help you to understand this particular course, break it down for you, reduce it to, as I said, some common sense things. Because law, whether it's business, criminal, or whatever, is basic terminology, understanding and how to apply the terminology properly. So anyway, so I'm available. Now, when you do text me, make sure that you provide me with your name and your course that you're in, because when I get the text, it'll just have the content that you send me, and it'll have a phone number that I may not recognize because I don't save all those numbers because I have so many students. And so feel free to text me. Sometimes I will call you back. Sometimes I will text you back. My mode usually is that if it's something that's urgent to you and important to you, rather than use the email, calling me or texting me is probably the best thing, even if I don't answer. And if you don't get me, please leave a voice message because I get so many calls for this phone number. I use this phone number for a lot of different things, including the church that I pastor. So you want to make sure that you let me know who you are. Of course, like you, I get a lot of those telemarketers or robocalls as well. So some calls I don't recognize, I don't answer. So you want to make sure that you do reach me. But I like to have conversations with my students. Many of you guys don't come to the live lectures, but I do hope in the future that you will, because of the fact that you'll be able to connect with me better and see me at the same time as well. So anyway, one of the things I want to point out to you in this course is that rubrics are very important. I sent you the rubrics, but I will be providing you with details about the requirements and what I used to grade your papers. APA and critical thinking are very important. APA is spelled out quite clear with citations in the body, references in the end. It should be both of them. A cover page that is properly formatted, and it should be typed in Roman 12 and double spaced. So we're going to grade you on that. You'll find that out right off the bat. But then I provide places where you can get help on APA, such as on the left side of your page, there's an APA assistance, and it tells you a guide that you can go to, and it will give you videos, it will give you formatting, it will give you everything you need to bring you up to speed if you're not familiar with APA. But it is important because that is a requirement of the school. You'll see it when we get to the syllabus in just a few minutes. Critical thinking. We want to be able to make sure that you guys are not just taking material that you discovered from research, but we also want to make sure that you've applied some analysis, some application of your thoughts concerning the issues, some ideas that maybe you can even challenge or include statements of how it may be differently, or present some alternate responses. The basic point is critical thinking. I'm a natural critical thinker because I went to law school, and having gone to law school, we learned what we call the Socratic method, where we were questioned constantly till we got the answer, and it made us apply our ability to think through the question, and then we would eventually come up with the answer. Well, what we were doing was actually doing some form of critical thinking back in those days, and still being taught that way in law school. But critical thinking is important to employers, and it's also one of our transferable skills that we'll talk about. And then I'll show you a video, not show you a video, I'll give you a link that's right here on this page. This page provides a lot of information to help you. Okay, so anyway, I've talked about the fact that you want to conduct research. You want to make sure you conduct research. We want to teach you dealing with information literacy, to be able to find information that you need, to be able to give it credited properly with APA, and to do it in a ethical fashion. And so the providing citations and references, using credible resources, but then not just going through your textbook, because that's you read that to understand the material. However, you also need to be able to conduct some research so that you can find what you need here. And then if you do just a paper with just that, you'll lose 2 points right off the bat. And then I already talked about APA, and I also talked about the cover sheet. Now, here's some helpful resources. I sent to you information concerning the statute of frauds. And you'll hear me talk about the statute of frauds. You'll read about the statute of frauds. And you'll hear me refer to them from time to time in this course. And I reduced the statute of frauds to the word "my legs." And you'll see in your papers that I sent you that you need to save, because you'll need to refer to them in your written assignments. The letters stand for M, Y, L, E, G, S. And if you learn those and apply those, you will understand what contracts need to be in writing to be enforceable, or to be able to not necessarily just be valid, but enforceable as well. And we'll talk about void and voidable contracts and all of that in weeks to come. But statute of frauds. So this is another place where you can find it. And then if you copy and paste this and put this on your browser, but you shouldn't have to, because I already emailed it to you, but I put it there also so that students can find it. And then this is information about your library and learning center resources that can help you as students as well. A lot of this information you find is under resources, such as things for Grammarly. If you click on resources, oops, let's try that again. It's not. Let me go back again. I don't know what that's about. Let's resend it. It says server not found. I don't know what that's about. Let me refresh it. Okay, let's cancel that one. Oh, I don't know what that is. I don't know why that's happening. Somehow or another we lost this. Okay, let's try to back out of it and come back to it. Okay, let's go do this. Bear with me a minute while we find out why that happened. Okay. Okay, so now I had to close that one. Somehow or another I'm losing Firefox. I don't know what's going on with the Firefox app. Let's take off the, let me remove the, disconnect the VPN. Bear with me here while I correct this problem. I don't know what's going on here. Okay, let's try this again without that. There it comes up. Go back into that. Log back in. Should take us there. Okay. So now we're there. Okay, now. Okay, I got to go back to share my screen. You won't see it. Now you should see it. There we go. Okay. And so, sorry for that issue. I don't know what it is. So I'm going to click on the Resources tab again, see what's happening. There we go. And this gives you your library and learning APA, your Grammarly, your Noodle tools, your writing guide. Gives you a platform for helping you to schedule tutoring as well. Library and Learning Center. Guides by resource. So if you do a guide by subject and topic, for example, this is business, so you're going to click on this, and then you'll go down to School of Business. You'll see it right there, and then it'll lead you to the School of Business guide, where it provides you with issues that will help you in your classes. Since this is a business class, it will help you deal with the issues there. Okay, so that's all under the Resources tab. So when you get ready to use that. But Grammarly, be sure you set up a Grammarly account. It's a free account. Check it, set it up for checking your plagiarism so that you'll be up to speed there in that. All right, then there's tutor assistance. You saw that. It's important for you to understand that tutors are not just for people who are failing, but it also can help you to sharpen up. We have in the Rasmussen College Tutor Match section, students who are trained, who have taken some of the classes that you're taking now and can help you and guide you in some of the assignments, not duty assignments, but to help you to understand APA if you have an issue with it, and haven't gone to those resources, you still need help, and it'll help you with dealing with Grammarly so that you don't constantly get Grammarly hits. Okay. All right. These articles, they apply to criminal justice. You can disregard that. Because I primarily teach criminal justice. But then here's a critical thinking video that applies for details that relate to understanding critical thinking. So you can take time to copy and paste this link onto your browser, and then you'll be able to take that information, and then you'll be able to utilize that to help you understand APA. It's not a very long. Here are your rubrics. Again, I sent them to you, but each week for your written assignments, there is a rubric. And it tells you this is the topic of the assignment, and it tells you what I expect and how to gain those points. And notice what it says. It says in section 5 is that you meet the page requirements, and grammar, punctuation, spelling, and then APA is provided as well. We talked about that. And every week you'll see for each one, week 4, week 5, and week 6. Then there's course projects that take place that you, in addition to those written assignments, that there's a rubric for weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, and you want to have those, okay? So you make sure rubrics are important. Notice that at the top, let's scroll back up to the top again, you'll see in bold print, rubrics. That's how, when I get ready to grade your paper, I determine whether or not you satisfied each of the criteria that's laid out in here. Current trend, describe, outline solution, student discusses why this crime is an issue and meets the requirements and follows the mechanics, grammar, punctuation, spelling, and APA, and so forth. Okay? Now, going further down, remind you about discussion posts. As you have discovered that discussion posts, initial posts are due by tomorrow, Saturday, as well as reply posts. This is the exception. And the reason why it's the exception is because normally discussion posts are due on initial posts on Tuesdays by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. However, because of the fact that the course didn't start until day before yesterday, Wednesday, we obviously couldn't have you to post something for a time when the course hadn't started. So therefore, you're given a break on your initial post to through 6. It will be initial post due Tuesday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Reply post due Saturdays, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time until we get to week 6. Then you'll see a different setting for reply posts and other assignments, but we won't worry about that right now. While I'm on discussion posts, I might as well cover the areas in that section. Discussion posts are in place of us being in a physical class. This is an opportunity for you to communicate with me and your fellow classmates concerning the issues of discussion for that week. And so you provide initial post as a required post and at least one reply post as a required post. However, I encourage students to reply to more than one post, because what you're doing is you're sharing your ideas concerning what other students have said. And you don't have to read them all because there's a lot of students in this class, but you know, maybe at least reply to 2 or 3. I've had students to reply to as many as 8 or 9 who enjoy doing that. That's fine. But make sure your posts are not just good posts, a comment, but to give some detail, provide some content, some information that demonstrates that you gave it some thoughts. Simple posts that are one-liners and very brief, you will lose points or receive no points on one or the other. So it's very important about posts. We'll talk about the number of points that you get in a little bit. The other thing I want to say on discussion posts is that discussion posts are absolutely due the week of the discussion forum. When we move to the next week, such as when we move to week 2, discussion posts for week 1 will not be given points because of the fact that the discussion will have been completed. And it makes sense, because if you think about it, if you're in class physically in a classroom and you walked in, you missed 1 week and you came the next week, the discussion sometimes might be a review of the week before that, but you're not going to spend time going through the discussion that took place the week before, because you're going to have to discuss a new topic. And that's why discussion posts are cut off for that particular week, keeping it contemporaneously with the materials that you are studying or learning about for the given week that you're in. So that's why that is. So it's in the syllabus too, and I'll pass by that quickly because I'm covering it right now. The last thing I want to say on this side of the page is that this is at the top, again, a place where you can find this classroom. you could click on this link, put it on your browser, and it will lead you to the classroom. Okay, there is no keyword or password to log in. You just can log in. Okay, so it talks about what's taking place right now, 11 to 12:30 p.m. Central Standard. Now that's a special one. Now the reason why it's taking place like that is because your lectures will be on Wednesdays, and generally I could have had this lecture on the first day of class, open house, but I didn't want to do that because I wanted students to be able to log in, deal with issues like the student lounge, to introduce themselves, to some started with the initial posts, and a few even started with the assignments. I don't know how that happened, but anyway, give you a chance to read the materials and learn about what the topics were for that particular week. So I didn't want to bombard you with that, so I decided to do it in the morning. And usually my lectures will take place the way it sets out here for weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So all the rest of the lectures will take place 5 p.m. to 6. Now the open house will be longer because I'm spending time going over not the content as much, but more so the expectations for the entire 6 weeks. So I won't do that every week. The open house will be a recording that will be available to you this afternoon or this evening, and it'll be posted down here where it says recordings with the link, because I will convert all these recordings to YouTube. It's recorded in WebEx, but I have a conversion recorder, and the reason I do that is because sometimes there are issues with using WebEx that students have pointed out. And then if it's on YouTube, it's readily available in all different places, computers, iPad, Android pads, cell phones, and in various ways that students can do that. Okay, so you'll see the recordings. They'll all be under here. And then I'll also email them to you. Now, so that'll begin the lectures next Wednesday. Every week in this program class, you'll have a lecture. There won't be any weeks off. You must attend the live lecture. Some of you already have sent me saying that you could not attend, and we understand that. That's why we put the or. Listen or look at the archive or recording. And then you should be aware that one of the requirements for getting parts of your grade is you providing me with a keyword or phrase that you provide to let me know that you listen to the lecture. Now, don't do what some people have done, and I know it catches up with you. Don't say, okay, I got so much to do, I'm going to just go and I'm going to go through and listen for the keyword, because the keyword may be given in the middle, it may be given at the end, and so it's important for you to understand. Don't just sift through it to get the keyword, to get the credit. Don't do that. That is not beneficial to you. What's beneficial to you is listening to the entire lecture, no matter how long it is at the time that you can listen to it. It's beneficial if you can come to the live lecture, but we understand that people have work schedules and other issues that prevent that. So remember, the final thing I'm going to say is that the lectures will take place Wednesdays, starting next Wednesday, which is the 13th, at 5 to 6 p.m. So 5 p.m. Central Standard. If you're in another time zone, remember 5 p.m. Central Standard, so that you don't get mixed up if you're in another time zone. And it will last an hour or less, okay? So that's that on live lectures. So now let's go over to the other side of the page. I'm scrolling up, there we go. And I provided you some resources about the writing process to help you. And this is the steps in the writing process, you know, and tells you what sources are available, the writing guide. You see all of that when you went to your resource page, and you also see it over here where there's the writing guide, Grammarly. I shared with you what Grammarly was about, very important. And the reason for Grammarly is to make sure that you are not just copying and pasting, that you are getting your grammar correct, your paragraphs are set up properly, and also to make sure that the information that you have used from your research is balanced off with information that is yours and your own creative ways. So we measure that by running what we call Grammarly check and checking the plagiarism box. Make sure when you do that yourself. And then the writing lab. Writing lab, again, you'll discover that if you submit your papers to the writing lab, if you do it, you'll need 48 hours turnaround, and you cannot do it. It wouldn't be a very good idea to do it Saturday night. If you're going to do it, you need to do it by Friday or before Friday, quite honestly, so that you'll get it back in time to be able to do what you need to do based on recommendations of the lab, and then submit, make your corrections, and then submit your paper, and then I'll grade them. Then it talks about tutors. I already talked to you about that. And anytime you want to use tutors, you can use it. Use a tutor match, and I showed you on your resources tab how to do that. All right. So let's make that less. And then I already showed you this. This next thing I'm going to go over quickly, the welcome announcement. Refresh that so I can, here we go. You should have read this by now. The first paragraph is an introductory thing, and then the expectations. Now, I'm not going to go over each one, but I am going to say this to you, that notice in bold print so that they stand out. All of these things are expected of you. These are not. This is not a boilerplate document. This is a document that says if you use this as a checklist, check your announcements, for example. Visit the student lounge. Student lounge, in case you don't know where that is not a physical place. It's a place in this course that is found under your discussion tab. If you go under your discussion tab, you'll find it there, and it'll say student lounge. And that's where you introduce yourself and share with your students so you can get to know each other. And then there's the course mail. That's very important. That's how we communicate within this class. And then the syllabus, which we'll talk about, then your calendar, your course questions, resources, that we already familiar with that, and then your report tab. That's for your book, your grade book, and then there's some other information. And then there's some, the bold print again shares something that you already know, because it lets you know in advance that there was going to be this open house lecture today. And then it lets you know what I just shared with you earlier, when the other lectures will take place, and so forth. So that will be available to you the whole quarter. You'll see that showing up. these next announcements, which is your weekly announcement, which I'll provide at least one. Sometimes I'll provide special announcements, but most of the time, one is adequate for you guys because I provide all the details and content in here that's necessary to help you to know what the assignments are for this particular week. So for the first week, Foundations of Business Law, and then your reading is chapters 1 to 3 of Essentials in Business Law, which is your textbook, and then complete the activities, Business Law Overview and Flashcards. Now, Business Law Overview and flashcards are not graded assignments. You'll see as I share with you very briefly what those are. But each week we have something like that in the module to help you to understand the information that is involved with business law. Okay. All right. And then talking about the course calendar, taking a look at the course calendar as well, and the course calendar gives deadlines, and I'm going to show you that in a few minutes. And again, there's a link to the lecture there that I provide for you, which I provide for you several places. And then be sure to participate in the discussion assignment, which we already talked about. And so the title for this week is Why do you have laws pertaining to business? And I already gave you the deadlines. So then there is the written assignment, and I told you about the rubric for that, recent business crime. And then I also will discuss the course project introduction. Remember, there's a course project in weeks 2, 3, 4, and 5, and so you're going to not only the written assignment, but you'll have the course project as well. So notice I have in bold print, pay close attention to the rubrics. I already showed you that I had those highlighted so that you can read them. So I want to make sure that you get that idea. I guess you get this point. So Professor Wright is trying to tell us, pay close attention to rubrics if we want to be very successful in this class. That answer is absolutely on point. Yes, that is true. And then the deadlines, your written assignments are due every Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Notice I keep saying CST, Central Standard Time. All right, and the requirements are found also are found under the Lessons tab as well. So we're going to go to that in a minute. And remind you about what's taking place right now. And then at the end, I encourage you to start strong and finish strong. In other words, I'm a person who encourages my students. I feel like I'm a coach, and you're the members of the team, and that my job is to have you utilize your skills and what you are able to do to maximize what you get out of this course, and the end result will be a good grade, and for you to achieve what we call student success. That's what I specialize in, okay? So you're going to learn that I'm recognized, life happens, and I'm going to share some story about myself and why you know that adversity is the springboard to success. I am going to be 69 May 3rd. You guys are much younger than me, but you're going to understand that I totally get the fact that you're going to run into some adversity in life, and that you're going to be given how I handle adversity, and I'm going to encourage you, and I'm sure that each of you will find some parts of what I share with you relate to you as well. I've had a number of students who contacted me to let me know that they appreciate the thing at the end. That's why it's a little longer. If I cut that part out, we would probably be done pretty close to an hour. Okay, but I'd like to make sure that you guys hear this, and that so I don't have to keep going over it. So those are the announcements. Now, let's just quickly go to the course calendar. So you see, starting with Wednesday, a couple of days ago, and if you open it up, click on it, it'll tell you what your reading assignments are. So I have that information there as well. Some students just look at this and they say, all it said was that. I said, no, click on it. And then it tells you live lecture, when that's taking place. And so we start at 11 o'clock, and we'll go to 12:30. And if you clicked on that, you'll see further details as well. Then your initial posts, you see the same thing. And then your written assignment for the 10th. Now, notice it says course project. Now, and then I say, if you open it up, you're going to say, oh, wait a minute, there's no assignment. No, I said, if you open it up, you will see this is not a written assignment. I will cover this during the week 1 lecture, and that's what I put in the calendar to let you know that I am going to cover that. But the one above that is a written assignment, and I told you to see the rubric, which I did go over with you, and we're going to show you the module in just a few minutes. Okay, so that'll be due on Sunday. And in kind will be the same. And you will notice 2 things about starting with week 2 that I've already said, but you'll see it on the calendar. When your initial posts are due, which is different from week 1, and when your lecture takes place, of course, which is different from week 1. But once week 2 all the way through, they're both the same for initial posts. And then you'll see reply posts stay all the way till we get to the end. Just for information, I'll open it up, because you can. The whole calendar is laid out for you already. I've already put together everything for you. And you will notice, excuse me, when you get to week 6, which starts on the 11th of March, that your initial post, reading, live lecture are the same. But that there is no more, your class ends on the 15th of March. So you'll be aware of that. So you know right now when your class is going to end. And I put that in your announcement when you get to week 6. But I also put it on the calendar. So if you clicked on this, you'll see it. So students don't have any reason to say, I wasn't aware. No, because we read your announcement. If you listen to my lectures, if you check the course calendar, you will know all of those kinds of things. So that's the course calendar, okay? All right, let's see, I think that's all I need to go with on this. Let me shut that down here. Okay, so now let's go up to the syllabus. Syllabus is this document. Now, think of the syllabus as contract. This is a document that sets out the expectations of the college for this course, and you as the student. So the college agrees to lay these out as procedures and policies as part of them, and you agree to abide by them, okay? And then it provides information at the beginning. Notice again, you'll see the same thing again. You'll see in my class information in more than one place. I'm a cross-reference guy. I guess that's the lawyer in me, but Anyway, cross-referring is very important to people because you can find the information. If sometimes you miss it at one place and then you'll be able to see it at another place. So this is information that's also taken from the course cover page. And then this describes the course and tell you what we're going to be covering. And so we'll be covering that during the course of the next 6 weeks, and what you should be able to do after this course is over. This is the book, which you all should have. If you don't, contact your advisor and or dean, and if there's technical problems with you getting it, contact the PSC, personal support. While I'm on that, if you have technical problems, and I said this earlier in my welcome announcement, if you have a problem, and it's a technical problem, PSC, which is personal support, is available 24/7, you know, and so, and you should be aware that, give me a second here. Okay, type this. So anyway, if you need any technical support, problems with your computer, something's not working right, contact PSC. PSC's phone number is at the bottom of every page. Here it is. I'm just scrolling down the bottom to show you. Here it is. Rasmussen Personal Support. They're 24/7. They don't take any holidays off. And then this is the phone number that you can reach them. And they can prepare a ticket. They can help you with your issues, okay? Sometimes there's a delay. If there's a PSC issue happening, please email me and let me know if you can, or text me and let me know. The bottom line is, you know, I won't consider that as an extenuating situation, something you don't have control over. So anyway, that's how you get your textbook and maybe some other issues resolved. All right, so I'm going to skip over this. I already did discussions. So now I also pointed out to you the documentation requirements and the APA requirements and explain why it's used. All right. The course content consists of readings, which you will see on the course calendar, as well as your weekly announcements, your discussion assignments, same thing, written assignments, course projects, which I have already gone over with you. And then remind you that there's a live classroom lectures that take place, which I am doing live right now, and then I will provide you with that. So notice what I do during the live lectures, and I talk about how important, it shows how important they are, and the recordings will be provided, and then shall remind you, review the schedule to determine when these sessions are part, and you already know that because it's also on your course homepage, and then I will communicate using any announcement, course mail, course tools, and of the times of the live classrooms. I already do that as well. So now let's look at how this breaks down as far as percentage and points for this course. So the course is 460 points. That would be perfect score. You get 120 points for your discussion post. If you divide that by 2, that's 60 points for initial post, 60 points for a reply post, which means 10 points, doing math in my head here, for initial post, 10 points for reply post. Now, again, remember what I said about them. You'll get those points if you follow those steps I talked about earlier. 26% of your grade, okay? That's pretty high. So if you pay attention, it's weighted pretty heavily. It's not like a little side thing. No, it's very important. The only two things that are ahead of that are your written assignments, which is 1/3 of your grade, and course projects, which are 120 points or 26% of your grade. And then your live lectures, because you get 5 points every week, constitute 35 points, 7 times, 5 times 7 is 35. Wait a minute. You get 5 points. Okay. So you get live lecture. You get 5 points each week. So you get 5 points for week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And actually, that's 30. I don't know where that 35 comes in at. But I think yours is 5 points. I know the other classes are 5 points. But anyway, the point of the matter is that each week you will receive points, and I'll show you what those points are in a few minutes. But anyway, the percentage is very small. Basically, make sure that you either look at the recording and provide me with the live lecture keyword by Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's the requirement to get all of the points that you're entitled to. So the formula is to have the correct word and do it timely. Okay, that way you'll get late points if you miss that Sunday. And now let's talk about the grading scale. Notice the grading scale, and this is across the college. I operate on the basis of these first 5. I pretty much operate on the basis of the first 4, but the 5. So from 100 to 80%. Your goal ought to be 100, but try to get as close to that as you can. Let me say this up front. Do not, during the time that you have me, call me, text me, or email me how to get a C in my class, or a C+, and definitely not a D, because I don't answer that. I say this up front to students. You don't need me to help you be an average student. What you need me for is to help you become an above average student. Let me say this, it's beneficial to you, as I've found by the success I've had in my professional career, to be an A or B student. There were times when I had less than that, but my goal always A, B. So when I became a teacher, which I taught college starting in 2011 here, I taught grammar school, special education, back in 1999 for a few years, up to about 2004 or something like that. But anyway, anytime I taught, I would always tell my students that I will help you to climb to the top of the ladder, but you have to do your part as well. But I have always taken the position that you will succeed in life if you get into the habit of being in the A and the B group. The A group can land you on the Dean's List. The B group can land you on the honor roll. Either one of those is, we call that creme de la creme, or the cream of the crop. When employers look for people, they're looking for those individuals who perform in that upper tier. Why are they doing that? Because those individuals have demonstrated academically that they have probably good work ethics, that work habits, that they are pretty smart, Not, you know what, C students are intelligent too. Sometimes people just don't apply themselves. But anyway, AB students have demonstrated that they're able to apply concepts and principles and learn. And those are the ones, if you are going to be hiring somebody yourself, ask yourself, who do I want? Do I want the C student or do I want the AB student? And who do I show the most interest in? And you'll answer that the same way that I just did. So the point of the matter is that you want to be able to excel, and I will help you, but I will not entertain discussions to keep you average, okay? All right. So anyway, I'll skip over this. Let's go right to the transferable skills part here. Transferable skills involve, these are some skills that we've identified through our communication with employers that they are looking for when they see potential candidates for jobs. And I know every one of you are not here just to be students or what we call PSs, professional students, but you're here to get a job in the future that will be able to help you to provide for yourself and your family and be able to have a good living. Anyway, the point of the matter is that employers have said these are skills that they are going to be looking for good candidates. And the number one skill, not number one, is, and you hear this first, is good communicators, being able to communicate written as well as orally. I specialized in all of those. That being a lawyer, you couldn't be a lawyer, particularly if you were a trial lawyer. But I'm a communicator, period. You see how I'm communicating with you. I do radio. I've done radio. I've done TV. I've done in the courtroom. I'm also a pastor. I preach and teach. You know, I've been a teacher in the schools and so forth. So communication is important. And so you're going to find yourself needing to be very good communicators. And your written communication, we've already been talking about that with your writing skills, dealing with the Grammarly, dealing with your grammar and your spelling and paragraphing and all of those things. So very important issues, particularly if you're going to be reading and writing contracts, as is very important in the business field as well. So communication is so important, and you'll have a chance to do that with all your written assignments that you have in this course. Critical thinking, I've already talked about that, and that's another one. That's my favorite one, actually, because that helps you to be an individual, and that's what we want. We want you to learn to be an individual. We want you to be able to teach yourself to be able to find your niche and stand above the crowd, so that you know, when somebody thinks of a certain thing, they say, oh yeah, they'll mention Richard Wright or whoever your name is in relation to those kinds of things. So critical thinking is very, very important, and employers are looking for critical thinkers. Digital fluency. We're in an age, when I came out of school, law school in 1978, which would be 41 years ago in June, that there was none of that. But now that's the way the world operates. So yours truly, at my age, had to adapt in order to continue to operate. And so we didn't have books on videos, and we didn't have books that were digital that we could carry around. I have an app in my phone that I use to carry my book in for teaching this course and other courses. It's called Bookshelf, and I have an Android phone because, but if you have an Apple phone, you can do the same thing. You can do the same thing with a tablet as well. So you want to be able to do those those things as well. All right. So digital fluency is so important. This bookshelf, that's it right here, and it shows you my books and the books that I have here that I use to teach. I'm not sure if this book is on here or not that we use for this particular course. It might be on there, but I don't have it in here, but I do have it. And so, digital fluency. Diversity. You're going to deal with individuals who are different than you are. You're going to meet people who don't think like you do, look like you do, live like you do, speak like you do. Their culture is not the same as yours. Their beliefs are different. Like I said, the languages are different. But you're still going to have to respect and learn. You're going to still have to deal with those individuals. I speak very little Polish. When I hear people speak, I don't know what they're saying, but I can communicate with them. And a lot of times I deal with those individuals because and appreciate their culture, and I learn from them, and then they learn from me. As being an African American man, I teach a lot of people about who I am. And remember this, diversity goes with groups, but really it's an individual thing. Every individual is different. Even if you're part of an ethnic group, you're not the same as everybody because every person is different. And you have to respect each and every person for who they are. Not be condemning of something that they disagree with you. Oh, we don't even want to start talking politics, but I explain to people that I respect the political views of people, even if I don't agree with them. And sometimes we have to compromise to get things done in the political arena. But my point is that the key thing is that you respect. You can agree to disagree. You can still continue on. So you're going to deal with individuals who speak different languages. You're going to learn to respect them. You're going to do that in school. I do that with my colleagues. You're going to do that in your classes. Even when you're online here, you're going to have discussion posts and you're going to see comments and things like that. You're going to have to understand where that person is coming from. I even have learned that students who complete assignments sometimes will apply their cultures in terms of how they respond. And I learned that quickly, excuse me, especially in some of the grammatical error issues, but it's based on diversity. So that's one of our transferable skills. Teamwork, because we already talked about that, you're working together, and I'm your leader, and you're the members of the team with your areas. Ethics. Let me say this. They started at home, and they should carry over. One of the things that you learn pretty quickly in life is when something is right and wrong. You learn the difference between that. Get into the habit of recognizing the right way to do things. Stop operating on shortcuts, unless shortcuts are beneficial. There are some that are, but the point of the matter is that when you are building a building or putting together a project, generally the steps A, B, C, and you can't go from A to C, but you want to make sure that you cover every step. So ethics provide the ability to be able to function. You're going to run across that a lot dealing with individuals in business, dealing with contracts. You're going to run across that situation with people in general. And the ethical student becomes an ethical professional. The unethical student becomes the unethical professional because people think they can get by. But eventually you get caught up and trapped, such as copying other people's materials, not giving credit for it, such as providing papers from paper mills for your written assignments. Here's the deal. You should understand what you're putting together and should become a part of you. And if you, for example, can't do that, then it's problematic for you. And so ethics take place here when you take exams. They're usually closed book unless they tell you otherwise. Even online classes, you have exams and quizzes, which we usually have in there, that you agree to abide by the academic code and policies, which can get you in trouble if you violate them. You can get in trouble as a professional. If you're an accountant, you know, I taught business ethics, and we talked about Enron, we talked about Arthur Anderson, we talked about some banks that had studies where there were problems. We talked about restaurants and businesses with the content of the food and some unethical practices, and you know, kind of. So in other words, the key is employers are looking for ethical individuals, as we all are. Those who have professional responsibility. If you become an accountant, you have a code of conduct. If you are a bookkeeper, anything that you do, if you're a lawyer, of course, anything, you still have to abide by the professional responsibility, and employers are looking for people who can do that. Information literacy, we talked about that already, but being able to document your information, be able to provide credible information, credible resources. Don't use resources such as Wikipedia. Wikipedia will get you a bad grade every time, as you should know why. And if you don't, I'll just quickly say Wikipedia is a word-based website, and people can change the information around. So the point of the matter is you want not only from credible organizations, but also the information not subject to be tampered with by anyone. So that's why we kick Wikipedia out in terms of saying that it is not considered as a credible resource. Then you have to be careful about some of the resources that you use or rely upon, because they are biased, you know. So you have to make sure that you use them, but you want to also express that. Maybe you would express that as your critical thinking, that you use the resource, but that point out the fact that it's sponsored by or controlled by something like this, like buy more milk. Milk is very healthy for you, and so forth and so on. Then you see at the bottom, sponsored by the Dairy Farmers of America. Well, of course you understand that, but the point of the matter is you also want to be aware of those things. So anyway, that's information literacy. So in the course and courses at this college, you'll have the opportunity to deal with each of these as parts of your assignments across the programs, okay? Attendance policy, I'm not going to spend time with this. I will spend time with the late assignment policy. I already talked about discussion posts, but I want to bring this to your attention. You have up to 7 days after an assignment is due, and as we already gave you deadlines and we told you where you could find your deadlines, you lose 10% each day that your assignment is late. Now, it says up to 7 days. Now, listen to me carefully. Don't get so comfortable with those 7 days, because here's what happens. 100% of a really good paper is turned in, we'll say, on Sunday. And that happens. You'll get all your points. If the same paper is passed and on Monday, you're going to get early, highest you can get is a 90. The same thing, then 80 for Tuesday, and it keeps going down and down. So that by Wednesday, here's where we are. We're around 80. So let's say Monday, and then you drop down to Tuesday. So now you are at still A minus. By Wednesday, you're in the B's. But by you get to the after 80, that's 2 days late. Then you're about to leave that and go to the C's and then down. So you see what I'm talking about. So it's important to get your papers in on time. All right. So now, in some cases, it says, such as late postings, you may be required to do an alternate assignment. That's very rarely going to take place here. So my deal is complete the assignments that you have, and sometimes I have to do something special with discussing posts based upon some circumstances that were extenuating. While I'm on that, let's go down to the third paragraph and read it just what it says, and then I'll talk about it. Instructors may waive the late penalty or time frame in the case of extenuating circumstances as determined by the faculty. What that means is that I have the last word. Your dean, your advisors, none of them. They say no, it's up to the professor or the instructor to be able to determine whether something is extenuating. Now, extenuating circumstances generally don't apply to, I got extra hours I had to work. There needs to be other things involved. I've had many things, and I'm not going to give a list of them, but I will say this. One of the extenuating circumstances that individuals will tell me that they will be deployed in the military during a period that they can't complete everything they need to, and they'll be gone for a certain period of time, then I will work with them, because I never deduct points for people serving the country. And when in situations where they're placed, I don't need your orders. I don't need a note from your doctor for surgeries. I'm going to operate on the basis that you're operating honestly and ethically with me. But you know, somebody says, well, maybe that student gets by. You may even in fact get by me, but you didn't pull nothing over on me. What you did was you opened up the opportunity for you further down the road to get caught with it. And you don't want to get back to the ethics thing we were talking about. So anyway, I'm very flexible when it comes to working with students about late assignments, and very fair and pretty forgiving. But I got to know. I can't operate on the basis of, 3 weeks into the course, you didn't let me know something happened in week 1 or week 2 that created problems with you. Then you want to all of a sudden get all your assignments in. Remember this, that by Valentine's Day, we'll be in week 3. I think I'm right. Yep, we'll be in week 3. The course ends almost a month later. So the point of the matter is that we, this moves pretty fast. If you're at week 4 and you're asking, you didn't do anything for weeks 1 to 3, unless you have a good reason, I'm not going to give you a chance to submit those assignments. But you need to let me know contemporaneously when it happens. So in other words, let's keep, communicate with me. I already gave you the mode of how to communicate with me, which is the most of any professor that you probably will ever have. Okay. So anyway, that's my late assignment statements. I don't worry about this part. That's something you work out yourself. And I don't deal with the academic integrity, because the college requires it, and if you sit down and read it, you will understand that we operate on the basis of integrity. And so my thing is, I like to provide professional, educated, and ethical individuals for whatever the area that they're seeking to work in. Okay? Very important. All right, so that's the syllabus. So now let's go back and let's take a look at some examples of how week 1 operates, and we're a little bit behind, but we'll catch up here. Again, the assignments for this week, as in every week, again, follow the rubric. And the rubric says you satisfied the page requirement. It's a 2 to 3 page with APA citations, and I already explained that, okay? And also that you will provide reference page. So APA citations, both in text and full. So what sometimes they say here, when they say that, they're talking about references. So full, that's on a reference page. But I already told you about how APA works. And then your due dates you already know, and then you will go to submit them in the Dropbox. Please do not submit your papers in a PDF. It needs to be a Microsoft Word document so that I can edit it, or at least be able to check for the grammar and also check for the plagiarism when I run my Grammarly check. Very important, all right? Then your discussion assignment, we already talked about that. And then your live lecture, lecture keyword that you'll give. And that's your assignments for week 1. And every week you'll see something like this. Remember, starting in week 2, you'll have a written assignment and a course project as well. So you want to make sure that you do all of those. And again, I told you what the rubric says, and you're going to follow that. All right? So let's go back and let's look at the lesson content. So the lesson content starts out with objectives, and we'll be discussing those issues, but not today. Then it gives you a link for your textbooks and the chapters and so forth. You get there. Then there's some activities and things for you that we won't spend time going over, but I will talk about the course project. All right? Written assignment, we already did. Discussion, live classroom. So the law overview is, take time to read this, and it explains the difference between the various laws. If you have any questions about this, since I'm not lecturing on it, feel free to reach out to me. Explains the court system, difference between civil and criminal, deals with health care insurance, and you go through that. Then there are these activity flashcards. These are things that you should do. Now, so you can do these to help you. So you go to, so anyway, you can get them by clicking no or don't know and retract. But if you, at what is an administrative agency, and then it tells what it is. A government entity that is part of the executive branch, which makes rules, specific activities, and has the power to hold hearings. All right? So then it tells you the remaining cards. So then you go to the next one. Then you go to the next one, and next one, till you get to all of them. Okay? And it tells you, you know, you go through the process. It helps you to learn. This is an activity that helps you to do it. Also, you can do this. Well, it will speak out. You can't hear it. I don't know if you can hear it because I heard it on my phone, Constitution, and if you flipped it over, it tells you you can't hear it because it's, but I'm saying if you use that, it will play, it will speak out so you can hear it as well as you can read it that way. So that's a good thing for you to do, okay? All right, so I'm stopping that. So now let's go to the course project. So now, as I told you already, there is a course project and deals with various parts of business, and it helps you to deal specifically, the biggest part is contracts. When contracts are accepted, written and orally. Oral contracts are valid. However, there are problems with it, which we'll be discussing during the weeks to come. And one of the reasons why oral contracts are not so good is people have a tendency to selectively recall. And so written contracts is the best practice that we require, because you can always take a written document. And you know what, people should understand that there are different things that you're going to have in a contract: offer, acceptance, consideration. And we'll talk about those in detail. And what is consideration? What is adequate consideration? And those kinds of things. So you're going to be dealing with that throughout these weeks to come. And you will find that you're going to deal with, prepare a written contract. All right? All right. It says here that for this project, you will be creating a contract addressing issues based on a story that you'll see. The project will give you the opportunity to incorporate terms and elements into an actual contract. Remember, I'm giving you some help with that, with the statute of fraud sheets that I've given you. But this says, and I agree with this, this contract will not be as complex as a mortgage or even a cell phone contract. Have you ever read through one of those? So anyway, the project backstory is given here, and it tells you this is what you're going to be using this right here. These are the things you're going to use over and over again. Then it's going to say throughout the weeks to come, you'll obtain more information between the parties, but you'll start out with this. Now, you don't assume stuff, you do provide details. So today is just the information, just introduction. But starting next week, you're going to have this to do. Then week 3, week 4, and week 5, your final contract. So what you're doing is you're building a contract, all right? So that's why it says rough draft at week 3, and then final in week 5. Now, the requirements you will be building will be due for week 5, and then it tells you. Now, what I have usually said to people in the past is put these categories in your contracts, and then the information that goes next to that, because these are some of the essential things that need to be in the contracts, all right? And so these are items that must be included, these items 1 to 8. There are some other things too, but these are the essential things, and I'm not going to go over them, but you will be able to sit there and you can read them. But remember, you should understand why these things should in there, and we're going to cover those during the next few weeks. Okay? Each of these assignments will be graded independently, and I'll provide to you feedback, telling you things that you need to do. that you did not do for step 2, for this first week, which is week 2, week 3, and week 3 particularly, because it's going to help you to make sure your final contract. All right. So your rough draft. Sometimes I've had a few, not a lot, but a few that were so good at rough drafts that I had to find little small things, and people got good grades in terms of doing it. All right. And then that's it. Any other questions you have, you can post them in the general course questions. And it says in the getting to know folder, well, it's also in the discussion section as well. All right. So I'll provide you with criteria and feedback to get that done. Okay, and that's it for week 1. Now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go leave this, stop sharing here, and I am going to take a few minutes. I should be through at 12:30, but I'm going to go about 10 minutes over because I'm going to do an abbreviated version for you of what happened. As I said, adversity is a springboard to success, and I share this with my students in all of my classes. The reason is I want you to understand why I'm empathetic and sympathetic with you. As I say, I've been through some pretty tough challenges. It all started when I was a kid in 1957. My dad was killed in front of my face by a guy who was living in the house. And he stabbed him with a knife. Now, I was 7, and I had 5 younger sisters, and we were all in the same bedroom where this all happened. I have a photographic memory, so I can close my eyes and I can still see, to this day, 2019, what happened in 1957. And so the individual did not go to jail. He, on a technicality, because there was no witnesses, and I was one, but they wouldn't call me. But the other turned out to be my mother, but it turns out she said that my father was the aggressor, which wasn't true because she was having the affair with this guy and in love with him, so you know the rest. So it was dropped. Well, the guy ended up living in the house with us openly, moving from his bedroom that he had into the same bed that my mother was, openly, and he began to operate as a abuser. So I grew up from 57 to 62. Those are the years where my mother was beat profusely many, many times by this individual. The police were called. He would go to jail. She'd go back and get him, bring him back home. So I lived in an atmosphere of domestic violence. It was pretty bad and tough on me, and of course my sisters, siblings as well. So the way I found out about Santa Claus is the guy got upset with my mother one time and sat all of us kids down and tore the handle off of a door in a closet, opened it, and there were toys all the way from top to bottom. He took those toys out, and one of which was a fire truck, red fire truck that I wanted and was expecting for Christmas, and he took an axe and chopped them up in front of us, and at the same time told us, "I'm Santa Claus," and you know, and was cussing, and that's how we found out. But guess what? My mother still continued to keep him there with us. So it was pretty bad. The area that I was living in was changing over. The gangs were coming in, but something interesting happened with the gangs in my life. The gangs decided that they would not recruit me because they knew that I was the only surviving male. They knew about my dad being killed, and back in that time, gangs looked at things differently than they do now. And one of the reasons is because before the advent of crack cocaine and these high-powered weapons, individuals solved them either with hands, knives, or either they weren't they guns, but they would let you know you're not a part of this and get out of there. There were fewer people that were shot or hurt or killed than they are now, because we didn't have all of that excessive gun violence that took place. There was violence, but it wasn't at that level. So anyway, my mom decided that we should leave the area anyway. So my mom had, as I said, 5 kids. My dad, 5 girls when my dad was killed, and 1 boy, and that was me. And so we moved to Gary, Indiana, in a nice home, nice residential area, where we had, by the way, we owned the building that we lived in. So it was, we still lived in our own place. But we moved to Gary in a single-family residence. That was the first time I lived in a single-family residence in 1962. And we moved there, nice community. In fact, about 5, 6 blocks down, with these little kids that we used to see, and they came to be known as the Jacksons. Yes, the ones that you know about. And so that goes back to 62. So we moved there, started in school, living in the community. It was nice. My mother had a little business downtown where she had a barbecue restaurant. So we move ahead to Memorial Day of 1963, and my mother left me in charge of the house, as she frequently did. And she and the guy, his name was Scott, Webster Scott, that was the guy's name. I couldn't say his name for many years because it was hard for me to say it, but I'm released to say that about 15, 20, maybe 25 years ago I started being able to say his name. Well, it wasn't any legal issues, but I did. So anyway, they left, and so woke up early the next morning. And by this time, by the way, my mother had 2 more kids. Those 2 kids were by Scott. So I had 7 younger sisters. So anyway, my mom left. So the next morning, I wake up and there's smoke in the house. Someone had turned on the oven, and I opened the windows and doors to let the smoke out. I saw the car that my mother and Scott drove pull away. I went and checked in my mother's bedroom, and she hadn't slept in the bed, but that wasn't unusual because that happened quite a bit. So anyway, she ended up, she was gone. So then I went on about the day, and everybody was up, and then these 2 men showed up and identified themselves as Gary police detectives. They said they needed to talk to the oldest, and I said that would be me. And I told them they couldn't come in, but because that was the rule, but they said, we need to talk to you. So I let them in, and then they announced that my mom had been found murdered in Chicago, and I started screaming out that guy's name to the top of my lungs. But then I quickly had to gather myself, because I looked around and my sisters were all up in the house, and I had to remember, I said, I'm now with all they got. Well, anyway, what happened is that we ended up being taken to the city, back to Chicago, to stay with an aunt, one of my mother's sisters, who made it clear that it was a temporary arrangement and that she would keep us there until they made arrangements to send us wherever they're going to send us. And we found out, at least I did, that the plan was they're going to split us up. And it was pretty tough. My aunt didn't make it easy for us living there. She gave us hard chores. She had kids there, and we had to do things that they would even do. I remember pulling weeds with my hands, and it was really very tough. Her kids could go to YMCA and participate in sports activities, but we couldn't. They had pizza, and they would give us the crust of the pizza. It was bad. So it was pretty tough. So an aunt that I failed to mention that came to live with us during that year in Gary, she was pretty tough. She was like Tyler Perry's character, Medea. She had a gun she carried, and people didn't mess with her. So the guy didn't do anything while she was with us. Then she left just before Memorial Day, early May, after I had turned 13, she left. And then I said that's when my mother was killed. Well, anyway, she came back when she heard what was happening, and she just told her sister, who was my mother's sister also, that she was going to take all of us, and had a house built in the area in Chicago called Morgan Park. And so I ended up living out in that area. Maple Park was the exact name of the community, and we moved out there. And we moved out there, my aunt and uncle, you know, it was still pretty tough for me. They decided they were going to keep us all together. But my uncle insisted that I change my name to his name, and that I allow them to adopt me. I said, I don't want to do that because I'm the only one who carried my father's name on. Well, that didn't go well, and so I continued with major problems. So that caused me to spend a lot of time away from home and so forth and so on. So anyway, I would go out and spend time with my friends. And my aunt would let me stay out until it got dark, and I'd come in, and then I'd come in and do what I needed to do and go to bed, get up and repeat the same thing. Well, in '64, that was when that was, I also found out that Scott had pled guilty, and they were sentenced him to 10 years, but 10 meant 5, and that for good behavior he would serve 3 1/2 years, which is ultimately what he ended up doing. So I was just disturbed, and when I get disturbed, I ask questions. So I reached out to the school library and asked if there were any books on lawyers or attorneys, and they had a book. I checked the book out, read it cover to cover, and then the next day, anybody I met, I'd introduce myself as Richard Wright, and I'm going to be a lawyer. Well, that went over, except there were people such as the first aunt that I was telling you about, who tried to discourage me, who told me I didn't have what it took, told me that you know, my background and family and all of that it was too hard. And even when I was in school, I went to high school, graduated from 8th grade in '65, and ended up at a school called Fanger in Chicago. There were counselors there who tried to discourage me. But there was a teacher there who is a friend of mine even to this day, who encouraged me and kept telling me, you know, I was good at speech and I was a debater and that I could probably do well as a lawyer. So anyway, I learned, and I'm going to tell you this, that my philosophy is when someone tells you you can't do something and you know you have the ability to do it, don't let them deter you. Don't let them slow you down or stop you. Be strengthened by the adversity of their negative position and continue towards your goal. But don't be disrespectful or any of those things. And above all, do not tell them, I'm going to show you. That is a phrase that makes me really upset with people, because I tell them the energy you used for that, you could have used that to further it. I like the way Nike did it. They said, just do it. And that's the way that I operated. And so anyway, I went through tough times there, living with my aunt and uncle. Came time for me to graduate from high school. And the church that I became affiliated with, I was a youth leader at the church in the community. They offered to give me a 4-year paid scholarship to a college. And all my aunt and uncle had to do was sign, and they said no, because my uncle was the one who was running it and said I wouldn't take his name. So that was that. So I said, okay, that wasn't the end for me. I told them when I graduated from high school, I was moving out. It turned out they were actually moving somewhere else too. But one of my friends that I come to know at the church, the parents who were also members of the church, they liked me. And so when I became a high school graduate, I was able to stay with them. Mom, I told him I was going to go to junior college, and I did. I registered in classes for night, and I found a job thanks to those people that I was staying with at a big law firm in Chicago. And here you heard that word, right? So where I was working in the mailroom, and it was a big Jewish law firm, corporate law firm, where I ended up going there, and I introduced myself to the lawyers as the same way I told you before, and they would say, well, welcome to the team, and got to know me. Well, I continued going to school at night. I immediately got married, which was not advisable. Then 2 kids came, one 71, one came in 72. And so anyway, I ended up finding myself in a situation where I moved out of the place where I was staying, stayed with my wife's mother for a few months, and then we got our first place. We didn't have much furniture. We had a mattress, and then the first child was born, and then the second child came, and it was pretty tight. But she was in school. She graduated in 1970 from high school. I graduated in 69, so we both were going to college and raising these kids. And I was the one that was working and wasn't making a whole lot of money. But the law firm saw what I was doing. They saw how I was doing in school. I stayed on the dean's list and honor roll. So I became a file clerk in that same law firm. Then I became a law librarian in that law firm. And then they saw that I knew how to do legal research. So they offered me a position that they created, didn't exist, called law clerk. Now it's called paralegal. And I would go to court with them. I would help draft documents. I would do research, not on the computers because they didn't exist then. We were doing them manually. So I became really good at that. In the meantime, I left the junior college and went to a 4-year institution called Roosevelt University, declaring my major political science, my minor accounting. And so I did well at that school as well. And came time for me to take the LSAT for law school. I didn't do as well, but I had my eyes on the school that I wanted to go to, which was Northwestern University School of Law. Now, there were people who tried to discourage me again. And they said, that's a tough school, that you need to apply to at least 3 schools. I applied to one, and that was Northwestern. Well, when I submitted my application, they have a little 6 pages or 7 pages. My package was big enough that they had to go into a big box along with that application on top. And I sent that. Well, the law school had made it clear that they didn't do interviews because they had thousands of people applying for 250 seats for each class, for each, class year. So my class was the class of 78, which started in 75. So anyway, they invited me to come down in early 75, and I went to the campus and sat and met about 4 people, and they asked me about this information that I presented, and I explained to them and talked to them about it in detail, and they liked what I said, so they had a little session. They met for, it seemed like an hour, but it was actually probably less than that, but it seemed like forever. And then they came back, and one of them said, we don't make decisions or give offers like this. He said, however, we will say we like everything that you said, we like everything we looked at, we think that you're okay. That's all they said. And they said, but we will be sending you a letter in the next few weeks that we think that you'll be pleased to get. And that was their way of telling me informally. And I did get the letter being accepted into the class of 1978. So I was on my way to law school. And so, by the way, the aunt that gave me the hard time at first, the one that didn't want us there, her daughter tried to get into Northwestern, and they wouldn't take her. She became a lawyer, but she couldn't get in there. And but anyway, I just thought throw that in as an aside. So anyway, I ended up at the law school. First year, they made it clear that we will not be able to work. There's no night classes, and that it's a very grueling 3 years you're going to have. But the first year is the make or break year. So what happened to me then is my ex-wife now, at that time wife, she was working. She had graduated 75 from Chicago State and became a teacher. Well, 75 was also the year that the first time in history Chicago had a teacher strike, and they went on strike. And then we had 2 kids at that time. Remember, they were born in 71 and 72, and we're talking 75 now. Well, it was tough. We didn't have any money. We ran out of money. We had to. Our landlord worked with us. That was the one good thing. But the utility people wouldn't, and so we lost our lights, electricity. I mean, our gas, everything. So we studied by candlelight, and we also found ourselves in situations where it was warm in the place because the building provided the heat. So we had heat, but we didn't have electricity. And so anyway, we studied using books, so we didn't have computers and all that back then. And we found ourselves going through a challenge. And it was getting pretty heavy on me. We sent our kids to their grandmother's house, which was about maybe 2 or 3 miles from where we lived, my wife's mother. And we weathered the storm. Now, it got so heavy on me that I told one of my professors that I was going to leave because I had to get a job. And she said, come to my office, and took me to her office and sat me down and basically held me hostage and told me that we can work through this. And so I took her up on it, and of course, rest is history. She's still at the college teaching now law. I go back and visit her, so she's still a professor there. She was a young professor, new when I started. So she gave me the advice. She says, hey, she says, you've overcome some challenges before. You can overcome this one too. And she was right. And we made it through. So I made it through the first year, and then the second year, and then graduated. Got ready to graduate in 78. But while I was in law school, one of my classmates, his dad was a distinguished criminal defense lawyer, and I met him and we became friends. Well, anyway, I was invited to their house, and I told the story of what I went through as a kid. And I was told by him, the father, who was the lawyer who would ultimately become a judge, R. Eugene Pensham was his name. He said, you're a smart young man. He said, I know you're smart because you got in here in Northwestern. That was his alma mater too. He said, it's not a situation where you have to, you just quit. It's just, come on. All of us have had problems. And so he said that he advised me. He said that you will make it through. Same thing that my professor had told me. But then he gave me another recommendation. He says, if you probably want to become a criminal defense lawyer, which he was right. And he said, now, I want you to know this. If you become a defense attorney, you'll learn the system very well. And he was right. So anyway, I continued. I got graduated, and I continued to work at the big law firm. They offered me a position. So I stayed there working in corporate law. They had some criminal stuff they did, and I went and I was there. And so anyway, I found myself in a situation where I could just keep moving forward. keep moving forward, keep pressing on, overcoming adversity. So I decided at the law firm, I thanked them, and then I left the law firm in 1980, 2 years after graduating from law school, to work with some other lawyers. I didn't like their ethics, but then I started my own, and it became Richard Wright and Associates. But then I started doing radio show called Know Your Rights, and I started doing all kinds of things like that. I started speaking in the community, and I did other things. I did entertainment law. I did, because in sports law, I represented some athletes and some entertainers. I was exposed to groups like the Jacksons. I was exposed to various individuals in various areas, record companies and things of that nature that I met through the law firm. And so anyway, I kept my contacts with the corporate people that I knew. I got to know Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, going back to when I was a messenger. And he encouraged me. In fact, I was offered a franchise, but I turned it down when I started law school because I couldn't do both of them. So I took the choice instead and ended up going to take the law school route. And so anyway, I found myself in a situation where I had to build this law firm. And so entertainment, sports, I used to travel with the Chicago White Sox across the country, got to know many of the players and gave them advice. And one of them, I was his agent for a short period of time. But anyway, I represented a lot of musical people and radio people as well, doing their contracts and handling some of their arbitrations and things of that nature. So I was well versed in the business side. And then I helped set up charters and corporations and things like that, subchapter S corporations, closed corporations as they're called, and regular corporations, partnerships, and all those kind of things, sole proprietorships. I did all of that stuff. I did real estate, corporate and residential real estate as well. So I did all that. So, but my heart and passion was in criminal law, and you know why, because of what I went through. So I ended up operating that firm, and it turned out to go okay. And then I had to finally just back off on some of the other areas because I was having problems with, I had people working with me, and it was a lot of problems that came out as a result of that, which I won't go into. But the point of the matter is that criminal law was my heart and passion. So I continued with that, and I did real well. I did real well. And I did real well with all the areas I said, but it's when I had other people that I entrusted working with me to not do. And remember how it works. If your name is at the top of the door, anytime somebody did something wrong, it fell on you. So I found myself now with 3 kids. The third one was born right in October when I graduated law school. In fact, just a little point of fact, I had an opportunity yesterday to witness her graduation in a program from Rasmussen College. So that was one of the most exciting things for me because the other 2 before her had already been working in professions. And so anyway, I found myself still dealing with challenges and issues because running a business is tough as the sole proprietor. We didn't have where you can incorporate lawyers, law firms and all that like that then. We didn't have that. There was little advertising you could do, but I did advertising through my radio show and so forth and so on. But anyway, I was moving forward. And so finally, I became a minister in '89. Well, anyway, let me say this. My first wife and I went separate directions, and, you know, we continued raising our 3 kids. And then I ended up getting married. And in '88, got married a second time, and then '89 became a minister at the church. And I ended up finding myself in '90 with a 4th child. It was a girl also. So all those 3 before that were girls. So at any rate, I quickly found out that there was something not right about my wife and her and our pastor. And I found out, jumping to '93, that they had been having an affair all the time. So I made arrangements to get out of that relationship. But let me go back to '89. '89, my second wife's mother became mayor of a town in the south suburbs called Ford Heights, pretty tough town. And she asked me to be her village attorney. So I did, and I said that this is a tough job and I'm going to need to carry a gun. I never had a gun before. I had a need to carry a gun. It was pretty tough there. So I ended up accepting the position. And then she said only police officers can carry guns. That's the law. So I became a part-time police officer, went to the academy and did the training. As a result, I never wore a uniform, but I worked as a police officer. I used to go to drug raids. I used to go on roadblocks and other situations. And so I was a village prosecutor where I prosecuted violations for the village and so forth and so on. And so I did that. Then I found out that the police department, the police officers were corrupt, and the chief was asked to step down and then later indicted. A new chief came in, and that chief found out I was honest and trustworthy and asked me to become his internal affairs investigator, which I did. And so I investigated unethical practices, malfeasance, misfeasance, non-feasance, and, you know, whoops, sorry about that, I thought my phone was off. And so I found myself, going through, turn that off. I found myself going through a situation where things were going, I was doing that. So back to '93, I ended up, my wife, and we got divorced. And so I left, of course, that church and ended up finding a young lady that I ended up becoming friends with, and then we dated. Now we've been married going on 25 years, July to 28. She is also pastor with me of our church. She and I now have 4 children. You see them on my student lounge there as well. So anyway, 2000 came to 2000. I decided that I was done with law, and I began teaching special education. I told you about that at all levels. I ran a janitorial company for a company called Service Merchandise in the state of Illinois. I had 26 stores as my responsibility. So it was a nice job. Then service went down. I started doing closings for title companies where people were refinancing their house, and I did those quite a bit. And then finally we come to 2011, and someone brings to my attention this company or school called Rasmussen College. I never heard of Rasmussen, so I did what I always do. I do my due diligence research. By the way, I had just started learning about using computers in 1999, so I was not that good at it. So anyway, I ended up taking the job as an adjunct professor at Rasmussen College in Romeoville, where I was interviewed for, guess what? Yes, business law. And I taught that residentially. And so I did well with that, but I let them know that I was a criminal justice professor, primarily interested in that. And they moved me into that, but then they continued having me to teach business law, business ethics, and then for a while they had me teaching medical law and ethics as well. So I've done all of that stuff. So anyway, I was enjoying my time at Rasmussen and as an adjunct. It was also challenging then because of the fact that the full-time professors got the courses, and sometimes there weren't enough students, and my course loads got cut, and you know what that meant? My compensation was cut. Finally, in 2014, a full-time position came open. I accepted it as State Program Coordinator, School of Justice Studies, where I continued dealing with the criminal justice program at all 4 campuses in Illinois: Romeoville, Mokina, Aurora, and Rockford. But I also was used to help in the business program, as I'm still doing now, as you can tell. So I continued on with that and got a full-time position with all the benefits and everything, so that was nice. So then my wife and I were doing better. We had our 4 kids then, and so we ended up, I really liked Rasmussen College. And then the program that I was working with, criminal justice, went completely online. So I had to learn more about online systems. Well, as a result now, so too did the business come online as we are now. So I continue and I enjoy it. And so I said all of that to say to you guys why I say adversity is the springboard to success. I went longer than I said. I said this was going to be an hour and a half, but I spent so much time going over the content, but I wanted to make sure you got this. So I want you to understand that I understand when you run into challenges, and I'm willing to do the things that people did with me while I was going through. They said, let's work together and stick it out. And that's what I'm going to say to you. And I'm going to leave you with the key word that you need to give me in order to get your points, and that word is adversity. That's what I want to see you send to me. So thanks again. Hope to see you next Tuesday, 5 to 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. And so I'm going to say good afternoon to you, and I'm going to end this session.